Hello, everyone, and hello, everyone here. We're so glad to have Jessica Parra here for the debut of your RUBI RAMOS'S Recipe for Success.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you, of course, to Tracy Badua for being here in conversation. For Jessica, she is like I was thinking about this earlier. How is it so that both of you are lawyers and have the creativity, just like, hey, we do a full practice and we do other things. I want to write a book. And with family. I don't know how you have the time.
We don't. No time. No time.
Ooh. So Jessica is the lawyer and daughter of Guatemalan and Cuban bakers. She is an LA native who loves to write about Latinas with big hair and even bigger dreams, complicated families, cats living their best lives, which I enjoy that one. I have several. And healing magic of acceptance. As I said, this is her debut novel, and we're so happy to have you here as part of your tour for it. I must mention you also can be found at Disneyland at the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, all the time. I'm there, like at least once a week. Yeah.
I have a Kingdom Key as well, but I'm not there at least once a week. Maybe once a month if I'm lucky.
Wow. Well, I just became a bi-coastal pass holder. I was just telling Tracy, so I'll be at Walt Disney World next week.
And of course, we have Tracy Badua, who I mentioned. This is her latest YA novel. This is not a personal statement, actually her debut YA novel, but she is also the author of 2 middle grade books, which we also had events for. Thank you very much. First one was Freddy vs. the Family Curse, and the one that we had last week, if you're watching this live, was The Takeout. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in live. If you have any questions you want to ask during the audience Q&A section, please don't hesitate to put those under the Ask a Question button, and I will raise my hand like a studious person and ask them during that time. You also have the opportunity to purchase either Jessica and or Tracy's books. Do both. Support the authors and support the store. Thank you very much. I'll leave these two to take it away. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. I've already warned her that my stuff is on my phone, so I'm not just like casually looking at stuff and liking things. Okay. All right. So I am so excited about your book. I had a fantastic time reading it, got very hungry, but I'm pretty sure you get that feedback all the time.
Yes. No, that has been and when we get into your questions, I think people are going to be shocked to hear some of the answers.
Ooh.
Yes, but thank you. Yes. All right. I'm glad that I did a good job at making people hungry, because that is my agenda is always to push desserts.
Excellent. That is the best agenda. All right. So I guess before we get started, just for folks who are tuning in, can you just tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes. So I like to pitch it as the Great British Bake Off SoCal version meets A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. And of course, though, in my version of Bake Off, my Paul Hollywood is hot. So
okay, I was gonna ask, but I was like, okay, let's just bring it up. Okay.
So he's hot for anyone who is wondering. And the book follows 17-year-old RUBI Ramos. She is a high school senior, and her recipe for success is on track. She thinks she's about to get into a very prestigious university, and spoiler alert, she does not. So in her quest to try to get off the wait list, she has to hire surfer hottie math genius Brian, and I know. And at the same time, the first annual Bake Off comes to town, and she thinks, if I win this, will that help me get off the wait list? It's not, because I really want to secretly bake, obviously not. And shenanigans ensue from there.
That's so interesting, because I feel like I just talked to, especially now where kids are trying to figure out their college plans, I think folks on the wait list anywhere are like, what can I do to really make myself stand out? Clearly you should buy 10 copies of this book and read it.
Yes.
And that'll be the recipe for success is in the back somewhere.
It is, but you should also buy Tracy's. This is not a personal statement, because it's yes, I feel like,
but don't do this. This is fraud. Don't do this. Do hers. Good.
Well, I did do yours, but we'll get into that later.
Oh no, juicy. Okay. I guess before we get too far off it, can you just tell us a little bit more about your inspiration for this book? You now I'm worried that you did do a lot of thought, but we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we will. And don't worry, we're both lawyers now, so we can both help me avoid criminal charges if it comes to that. But so the inspiration for this was growing up, I just I really didn't see any media that focused really onto like the duty aspect of,
Yeah.
because it's like I feel like in high school, like especially like as children of like immigrants and like first gen kids, it's like there is that pull of like, do I want to do something that I want to do for myself, or do I have to like honor my parents' like sacrifices? And when I did read books about like someone facing like duty versus passion,
Yeah.
I feel like duty was always like swept under the rug, but for me that was important too, to honor some of that. So I think that was the nexus of it, of like how, like, is it possible to be maybe like mix both duty and passion? And during that time when I was like thinking about these questions, I also binged all of the seasons of Bake Off when it came on Netflix. So it was just like, I was like, okay, I think this is a perfect vehicle to try to like blend those two things, like answer that question through this like plot device of having a baking competition.
That really is interesting because I feel like, especially when you're talking about how the duty part really doesn't come into play until I, at least like when we were coming up and we were reading those books, like I'm just gonna go to this like this party, like screw everything, and we were like, my mom would never let me.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing, kid? Like, what's your homework?
Exactly. So it's like, and for like in that media, it's like, I mean, like I don't know about you, but I was not even allowed to spend the night at like a friend's house. So
It was a bigger deal. I had to like
Yes.
make, we're lawyers. I had to make a case for why I should be like staying at somebody's house, or you have a bed here. It's like I know. That's like that's not the point.
Exactly. So I think that was, I wanted it, in Western media, especially with like characters that come from backgrounds like ours, the like that element didn't even apply. So I wanted to explore that a little bit.
Okay. Are you a baker?
I am not, which people might be shocked. Like I don't even have a working oven right now. So I didn't even get to experiment. Like, okay, like spoiler alert, like there's like recipes in like the back of the book, and I'm like, do they even work? I did. No,
kind of like loosely. We're like, all right.
No, well, my
Throw
sister,
some flour in
my
there.
sister's I know, right? My sister's a baker.
Okay.
She owns a bakery, and so it's like I did heavily rely on like her research and some of the bakers at the bakery. Like I did get like research from them, and so it's like I don't even like things that are overly sweet per se. Like I like more of the savory stuff. So like all the breads and stuff that are in RUBI, that I love, like the bolillos and all of that. But like as far as like sweeter things, I don't really have like a sweet tooth, but I did heavily rely on like research, from my sister from the baker is there, and binging Bake Off, of course, and like a lot of like feeling, smelling, like so I did like all of like the texture.
This is like fantastic research. You had to like sit there and be like, it's for my book.
It is. But I think I did a good job. I think because it's like people that has been like one of the consensus that it's made them hungry. So I think, with like a lot of research, you can write about something you necessarily don't know. So
that's fantastic. It's kind of like the mark of a really talented writer, obviously, is that you were able to convey all of these fantastic sensory details to us. Real quick, can you tell us the name of the bakery and where it is?
Yes, shout out to Elizabeth's Bakery in Southgate.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's awesome. So it's like the bolillo that like is in RUBI, that's like straight up from my sister's bakery.
Okay.
Yes.
I know you said you're not a baker and that your oven like may or may not actually work. But in the entire history of like of your lifetime with baking, what's the most ambitious thing you've tried to bake?
Oh God. I did try to make an upside down cake once.
Oh.
I think a pear or like an apple upside down cake, and it did not go well.
Oh.
Yeah. It is really complicated. What about you?
I'm not a baker.
No, yeah. Baking is hard.
Baking is very hard. Like it's so I have a middle grade book coming out next year with Alicia Dow, who is like a professional pastry chef. And she's like, we should make cookies. I'm like, you can make cookies. I can watch. It's
hard. One time I tried to make cookies, and it like turned out like caramel, like it just like melted. So I think I put like too much butter, too much sugar, because it was just like
in my head. I'm like, there's no such thing. Yeah. And then like bakers like actually.
Yeah, actually no.
Science, Tracy.
Exactly. Science. Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next, we briefly talked about this earlier, but RUBI struggles with the idea that her family wants more for her. So we were talking about duty and everything. So for folks who are kind of new to this book, can you tell us what that more is and why it's so important for her to follow this recipe for success? stuff.
Yes. So and like not to get into too many spoilers, but there is like a part where it was like very implicitly and sometimes like explicitly stated, that Ruby's parents, like their version of success is like either become like a doctor or become a lawyer, which I think is like very classic for, like immigrant parents. Yes.
Say the two lawyers that are like hanging out right here.
Exactly. Say the two words. And I mean, honestly, like one of the reasons why I did end up going into law is because I sucked at math. So it's like, had I been good at math, I might have become a doctor. Who knows? But I think for like a lot of immigrants, that's what that's just like the classic things of like success. So for Ruby's parents, same thing. Like her parents are bakers. And again, going back to what we were saying about like baking being hard, and it's like a very grueling job. So like in their heads, like they want her to have like a white collar, and like there is like no whiter collar than becoming like a doctor or a lawyer. So that is like for them what like making it or like the American dream like would be getting like those type of degrees.
So you have obviously gotten like the law degree and like the fancy certificate on the wall. Have you always wanted to be a writer? Did your family have feelings about it, or like how do they feel about it now? Because obviously you've got fans in the crowd.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it's like how real do we want to get, right? But it's only everybody here on LinkedIn. And people who know me like know that I'm very honest, but I think I've always been a storyteller, and whether that because it's like at first I wanted to be like a fashion designer, like the bucket list goal, maybe one day I'll like go back to school and go to like USC and to become like a filmmaker. So I think I was always drawn to story, and I think I'm a storyteller at heart. And it's just like the media, like I've always dipped my toe a little bit in it. And I think you could even like tell a story like in baking, becoming like a baker, because I often wondered with like my dad, since like he did, he was a baker. Like I wondered, and he was like so creative with like a lot of things. Like I wonder if like that would have translated to him being like an artist if he had like the chance, or something like that. So, but to answer your question, so I think the creativity again, it's like one of those things where like immigrant parents, they come from like a place where financial security is like what is of utmost importance, and not just like financial security, but like their definition of it, you have to reach so high so you could have such a big safety net to like not fall to like where they were, which is like valid because of like their background. But because of that, I think it like cuts off the possibility of even like normal jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for them, whenever I did try to broach the subjects of like maybe majoring in something that like, focused on creativity, it was like shut down, where it's like and now that, like I've been like talking to you and like talking to other people, like talking to my sister, like these good questions, like I'm like, no, it was like explicit, like, like it's be like a doctor or be like a lawyer or else. It's like not going to be good. So, and this going back to like your book, I think that like sometimes leaves kids like not feeling safe. And so we don't really tell our parents like a lot of things, like in Carla's case, like she wasn't able to be forthright. So I think it's like my parents did see me be creative, because it's like now I'm just remembering like there was even a time where I wanted to be like a rock star.
As one does.
As one does. So like music and like all of these things. So, but like they always looked at it as a hobby, and I really couldn't tell them, oh no, like all these like things, like maybe I don't want it just to be a hobby.
So it's like, oh, you like being loud, go be loud in the courtroom. You're like, oh.
Exactly. No, exactly.
You're like, no, but over here, like the courtroom.
Courtroom, exactly. So that's really interesting. So it's like, no. And even now, it's like with even my mom, like I really can't, I think sometimes that's like damaging, right? Because it's like, so I was like telling my sister, I think like now I'm just like very careful of like who I tell like what I want to do, because even like like as writers, it's like people always I don't know, it's like people think it's like if you're like in the arts, like oh you're like so like unless like they're in it, I'll like really share, or if someone's like really supportive and always has my back, then I'll share. But other than that, then they could like cheer for from like afar or like not, and that's fine.
I mean, we are not millionaires. I assume. I am not a millionaire. I drove myself here. I did not take my car to
Yes.
to over here. So it's. I feel like we're seeing a lot more of that kind of in media. The idea of like the pressure is for art to be profitable.
Yes.
And it's a really odd thing because you still like people have a lot of lofty ideas of like, oh, you're a writer, you must, sit with your typewriter in a field full of blooming flowers and just like
Yes.
think all day. It's like, no, you get done with your full-time job, you find something semi-nutritious to eat, and then you try to squeeze in writing. So it's like, it's I see why, our families were obviously like, hey, set yourself up so you don't have to worry about like, healthcare or where your food's going to come from and that kind of thing. But it is, I don't know, the pressure to like do something profitable is very,
Yeah.
very interesting.
It is very interesting.
So we talked about lying to our parents. Sorry. How do you think readers will resonate with the idea of like faking it till they make it? Because we're like blanket, spoiler alert for folks. You should have bought your 10 copies and read the book already. But like I guess, how do you think readers will respond to Ruby's quest here?
It is so interesting too because it's like I did not follow the maxim of like staying off Goodreads.
No.
So I it's like I have very thick skin and
Okay.
I am very nosy. So I did dip a toe. And sometimes I feel like it's even helpful with like coming up with a synopsis. Like I'm like, some of these people are better back at coffee than like my, than some publishers. But it's like really interesting because it's like I feel like some people were like so offended by like the notion of lying, but then other people got it.
Yeah.
And exactly. And again, it's like I feel like even with like Perla's situation, like a lot of like when there was that much pressure on a kid, they're not in a safe space sometimes to like tell the truth of whatever the truth like may be. So for Ruby, it was like, she knows it's wrong. She grapples with like feelings of it, but like it's also like what she thinks she has to do.
Yeah.
To like accomplish her goal, and so she does it. And there's ramifications, So I think that's important.
Right. In case there are any parents who are like, oh, I shouldn't be reading that strike. Don't worry. Like, but she knows it's wrong. There's ramifications.
And I think that's what you did so well too, because it's like in yours there's consequences. So I think it's like, there is things that like I think kids have to do, and so I think it's like important to show that. But then I think it's also like equally important to show like that there are consequences to your actions. Like so it's bad.
Oh, yeah.
Spoiler. Spoiler alert.
Okay. And knowing that this is online, but what is the biggest or most bizarre lie you or someone like a friend or something?
A friend. Okay.
Like if you've heard a friend.
A friend. No, I'll be real. As a teenager. Okay, so no, this I did. Like, and when I was reading Tracy's book, I was like, why do I have so much anxiety right now? Like, why?
I'm so sorry.
Like, this is like making me sweat. And then I was like, oh, because I like lived some of this. So like I my sister doesn't even know this. She's like in the crowd, and I think my cousins are watching, so they don't know this either. But I did not graduate when I said I did. So I walked for my college graduation. There's like a child in the room, so it's like your ears do not do this. But I was like a semester short of credits, and I knew that my parents were going to be so mad if I didn't walk. So I walked anyway. Like and then
you got like a full cap and gown.
I got the full cap and gown, and then like because it's like when I like looked into it, I'm like, wait, they can't give us like all the diplomas like that day,
right?
Like because there's like hundreds of people like walking, so
they're blank.
They're blank. I didn't know, and so as soon as I knew that they were blank, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna walk then, and then I'm just gonna like then do all of these like credits that summer and like in the fall, and so that happened, and so it's like. And when you get like and then you get your diploma months later, and again, it's like I feel like some parents. They do want that for their kid of like having like this like shiny diploma, but I think a lot of it too is like a performative aspect of it of like, look at what like our sacrifices did pay off. Like look at my kid like now that I could have as like this shiny trophy to like prove it. but like no one cares about like the details after, since like the diploma comes and the diploma comes months later, and then it's like, of course I like ordered like the fanciest like frame for it, which took even like longer, and then like no one just like looked at the diploma, and so they don't see that like the date is like off.
Like it was an error on the school's part. Like,
exactly. And so that's why like I started law school like a semester late, and then I don't know what excuse I gave for that. Like I think I wanted to like make sure I, you know, studied like even more for like the LSAT or something. But so yeah, that was the biggest lie I told in pursuit of higher education, and also though that pressure to like perform.
Yeah, because like if you didn't walk, like it would be a big deal.
Yeah,
that's so smart. Like, okay, no one
don't do this.
No one do this. But you're right. Like I remember like for graduation, you would just I think they would write our names or like like phonetically even.
Yes.
So that they could say Tracy Badua and then like put on a post-it or whatever, hand it as you go up. Here's a blank thing, like shake hands, take a picture, and then
that's it.
And then no one will know.
No, and no one knew.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like you didn't know, did you?
A lot of people.
there are shocked faces in the audience. Oh my goodness.
Someone in the chat says, I was at that graduation.
I know. Shout out to Karen. Yeah, shout out to Karen.
Oh no. Okay. Sorry, you guys.
Oh my God.
You're gonna like. I hope your phone. Like
I have to drink some water.
You're gonna check your phone, and there's gonna be all these like angry face emoji from folks. Okay, so kind of moving off of that, we're not gonna go into more lying, but you know, with there is what I enjoyed about this book was there are so many layers to it. Like you always talked about like the baking and like obviously the family duty and everything. There's also the sense of Ruby being an outsider in the fictional town of Pelican Point. I thought you did that really well, but can you tell us more about like how being that outsider like motivates her and kind of how that drove the story?
Oh, that's such a good question, because, and I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but it's like sometimes like spite is like a motivator, like a great motivator. So it's like someone telling you that you can't do something. I think that's really interesting, because I think that being that outsider and like facing some of those like microaggressions, even sometimes when they come from like, you know, a quote unquote like well-intentioned place, that's like the moment, like spoiler alert, when like Ruby really is like, oh no, like a part of me really does want this, you know? And again, it's like, I think it's like the Pelican Point is also like one of the things I try to do is make it like a microcosm for like some of the stuff that she's facing at home too. You know, because it's like she doesn't necessarily sometimes feel safe in like what she wants to do at home. And then it's like, again, like in the greater world, she's also not sometimes like safe, you know, with like as being like an outsider. But I think that's like one thing that people don't give enough credit for, of just like sometimes that like I'm going to show you is awesome feeling.
Yes, it is. Kind of going off, you know, we talked about Pelican Point and like kind of expanding it further. She just meets all sorts of great people in the book. Who was your favorite character to write other than Ruby?
I love that question, because I didn't even realize this until now. I think it's Devin. So, and one of the reasons I think it's Devin is because like Devin's like parents and her family are like very supportive, very accepting. So Devin is just like her best self, you know, like in high school, which it's like, you know, like, and it took me, I'm still working on it, but like, I think Devin is just like ultimate wish fulfillment. Like, and then even,
oh my God, I wish I was put together in high school.
Yes. So
or now.
So I think it was Devin, because it was just like she was just like herself, and like always, you know. And then like by the end, like after high school, it's like she's like really like comes into herself really young and like is all systems go. So I think writing her was really fun, because I like it was ultimate wish fulfillment.
I don't know if anyone has asked you if like if you were to do a book 2 or if you're working on book 2, like would Devin be a part of it? Like
she does make an off-screen cameo in book 2.
Ooh,
so she's in there, and there is like a Ruby cameo.
Oh,
and
that's cute.
Yeah, like you find out like who wins like the second annual Bake Off, which but oh God, I would, but I think yeah, no, I
Or if you
think
just want to keep her perfect. You just
yeah,
want
yeah, I just want to, yeah, I just want to keep her perfect. Yeah, there's no arc there. She's living her best life.
One thing that okay, so I kind of I'm trying to keep a track of time.
Yes.
Because we're having like way too much fun. A thread that you kind of weave through is her Cuban roots, and that's actually something that when I was reading the jacket copy, I didn't realize how kind of like you sneak in these really hard hitting moments. Like I'm having fun. Like oh my god, I'm crying. What is happening? Like the roots part of it. Like why was it important to you to kind of include that in the story? Was that an early draft? Like
that came, I think, the more I dug into the story, then the more I really uncovered it. And I think I came to the conclusion that like, you know, like I'm like a daughter of like diaspora, so it's like I'm living in that. And with like a lot of like people I think that have been like exiled or like refugees, they really don't talk about you know, where they come from for various like reasons. So and again, it's like in media. Up until like recently, it's like the Cubans that like I would see are like Cameron Diaz or Ricky Ricardo, and it's like I obviously don't look like them. And you know, growing up in like the Cuban community that I like was around, like when I was younger, they were also white Cubans, and so a lot of the times too, it's like I remember like a lot of the racism that I felt or have experienced like growing up was, you know, because of the texture of my hair or like the color of my skin within the Cuban community. So a lot of times, like when I was younger, I didn't feel Cuban enough. And especially since my dad really didn't like talk about Cuba and for various reasons, like I always wanted like a connection and anchor to that. And I think like I found that through food, even though I'm a crappy baker and I can't like bake. So for me, it was like, I wanted to like write about that because a lot of times it's like, you know, food or music is really like the only way that like we could connect to like a place that we haven't been and that our parents really don't, you know, it's like they just want to focus on like now becoming American or the American stuff and like not really talk about like where you came or they came from.
Yeah, like of the kind of like seeking that information or that connection like in another route because obviously like it's blocked with her dad. Like she can't figure out what's going on with them, so she's going to find her own way.
Yeah.
Aww. Yeah. I asked about like whether it was an early draft, so I kind of want to go more into your writing journey. How many books did you write before this?
None. This is the first book. This is my first book, but since you know, like I am from like LA, I didn't even know that like people wrote books. It was like something that like I thought, you know, it's like I just knew about like screenwriting. So I did write screenplays. A lot of screenplays. So I think I wrote like a lot of screenplays that like ended up like going nowhere. But this was like my first book. And the way I even got into that, because it's like I would take like screenwriting classes like at UCLA, and there was like one semester where there wasn't any available. And so I'm like, oh, let me just like then take like a novel one because it's like writing is writing. And then from that first class, like RUBI came into my head. I just like ran with it.
Oh, that's cool. So like, I mean, you already talked about how you've always been a storyteller. So that kind of makes sense of just like, you just needed to find a format for it.
Yes.
Any big ways that, so RUBI started in this novel taking class from then to what's in front of you. Any big changes?
Yes. Okay. The biggest one, and people are not going to believe this, the challenges were not live. Like in the competition with like all of the people. So I was just like, how am I going to do a competition with like all of these people, all of the things? And so it was just, I think like as a baby, like novelist or whatever, like it was just like, that was so daunting. And so like my work around that, like from the early drafts, and we get a little bit of this in like the first challenge, where it's like the baking competition was like, you bake at home and then you bring it and then they judge it in person. And then my mentor was just like, no, like, that is like what people love about the baking competitions is that chaos in the tent and like the smells and like things going wrong. So you have to do that. And so I was like, okay. And so I went back. So that was the biggest change. Like in the first one, they were not in the tent.
They were just like, let me just show up and
Yes.
about this thing.
Yes, exactly.
Aw.
So I had to go back and do that.
That's funny because I feel like that's one of those things that like eventually kind of clicks for you when you go from baby writer to like not so baby writer is like, wait, I can just change this because like I
Yes.
completely made it up.
Yes.
like, okay, the competition can be different because I say it is. Like, it's like,
Exactly.
wow.
But it's wild because it's like those moments don't come until you're in it.
No, because you're like, I can't change it because I wrote it that way. They're like, but you can unwrite it that way.
Exactly.
It's like it changes.
I know.
It changes everything.
I know. It's like I'm going through that right now with like book 2. So I'm changing things every day and it's just like fine now. I'm like, I
It's
can
fine.
change it.
I'll just
Yeah.
go back and I'll change these. It's like
Yes.
everything is fine. Ooh. The next question is about how debut is going.
Oh, cool.
But I guess like what's been useful to you as you publish your first book? Like I know, before we started like our official chat, we started talking about like, okay, getting to know other authors or like Slack chats or anything like what has been most useful to you as a debut?
Definitely the community. I think just having like I did join like the Slack for like the debuts and that's been like instrumental. And I also did Pitch Wars
Okay.
before, so I came out of like Pitch Wars, and so I already had like this like built-in community. So I just think not only do you need someone to like vent to, like that isn't your family, that someone that is like because that gets annoying, but like someone who's like also going through it and
Yeah.
knows like a little bit more about the industry. I think that's useful, and then also I think publishing is one of those like fields where there's not a lot of transparency. And so it's like having that community so you know what's like actually going on and like what is normal and what is maybe not so normal to protect yourself, especially I think as a marginalized writer,
Yeah.
we need that extra layer of like protection. Because even like as a lawyer, I'm like, okay, like I could read a contract, I could do all of these things. I could go in there and like negotiate or like ask tough questions and
Yeah.
not be afraid, but I don't sometimes know what to ask
Right.
because it's like this is like not a transparent like business. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know what to do sometimes until I'm like that's already happened and then I have to like deal with it.
Like, that is a very like lawyer thing of because for sure you can read the contract and be like, okay, this makes sense and this makes sense, but you won't unless you are in the business or like have other friends who know exactly what to look for. You might miss that you don't get a payment until book 2 is published or blah, blah, blah. Like there's like these different deadlines that they kind of just like, move around.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad you connected with other writers.
Me too. Me too.
Okay, so you said you were like we just got our Disney annual pass. Like we literally just got it for my daughter's birthday. So I'm brand new to this whole like wonderful show up at Disney anytime world. And I mention this because you have so many cool pop culture references in your book. How did you choose like the Spider-Mans and the Star Wars references?
Oh God. Well, I think it's like I've always lived very close to Disneyland. I've always had like a pass, so I think that's just like part of my DNA now.
Did you work there?
I didn't, but
Okay.
I think I should. It's horrible because it's like one of my dreams was to like work for 6 months at like the Galactic Star Cruiser, and it just announced that it's closing, so RIP. So I'm not going to be able to do that. But I was like thinking, I was like, I could be like Lady Tremaine or like one of these like older gal characters with like the gray streak, and I could be like a villain. So maybe eventually, like I think that would be so fun to do. But as far as like get like for the pop culture references, I just think it's so in me. So I just like I chose like moments that I felt were like very organic or just like funny. So yeah, like since like Ryan, this is like a little behind the scenes thing, but like I really modeled him after like a Yoda and like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like I wanted like like
What
that.
an interesting mix, but like surfer.
Yes, but make him hot. So like a hot Yoda. So it's like then I chose like little things that were like organic to that.
That is fantastic.
Yes.
Did you, I guess, like in your early drafts, did you have a lot of those and end up taking some out, or like did you sneak? I'm just curious now because I feel like there's a point where you reach like with like your agent or your editor where you feel comfortable just kind of like putting stuff back in the book.
Yeah, no, the only thing that they did tell me to reel back, but I'm like also like besides being like a Disney adult, I think I'm just like secretly like a dad because I like love dad humor and like grandpa humor. So they did tell me to scale back some of the puns. But so I was like, okay, fine, because there was like double the amount more. So I'm like, okay, fine.
You're like too many baking puns.
Exactly.
You're like,
So that's valid. But as far as the Disney stuff, no, I think they let me keep that. And for book 2, it's like all Disney and Star Wars. Like I'm like, okay, like maybe like is Marvel gonna or not? Is like Lucasfilm gonna like call me because it's like it's Star Wars. Like it's an official Star Wars and like Disney stuff. So yeah, but they're letting me keep it.
oh, hey.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Okay, stop. Moving on.
Moving on.
Before we get in trouble. So for that, when I think of your book, I think of like this sweet romance with this like Yoda, Obi-Wan, the baking, obviously, and then these kind of complicated family dynamics. So if folks want to continue that after like that feeling after reading your books, TV shows, plays, whatever, what would you recommend?
Oh, okay, that's a great question. Obviously, Bake Off. So like you have to like binge like Bake Off on Netflix all seasons, and I think that's like one of the only other shows. I think the only show where I've like binged it multiple times. It's
It's
so
like it's very soothing.
It's so soothing. I love it. And then as far as like the fraught or complicated mother-daughter relationship, one of the best movies for that is Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig. It is so good, and I think that one is just like so real, and it shows both like the love, but then also how there's like pain there, you know. And so I think I try to keep like for RUBI like joy at its center. So Lady Bird is a little bit like more adult version of that. That one's great. Obviously, your book. Obviously your book. Also, shout out to San Diego native Laura Taylor Namey, A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. We have to do that. So I would say those.
Oh, nice. I'm curious. So would you consider like the GBO watching? Would you consider that research?
100%. No, it was legit research. Especially if there's some challenges where it's like I would watch over and over
try to
capture it, or even just some of the things that like were said, because it's like I'm all about also working smarter, not harder. So
you're sitting there like the crumbs. Something about the crumbs.
Exactly. So I was all about that. But yeah, definitely research. But again, it's just like so soothing to the soul. So
it is, and there's they're gonna call and be like, guys, stop talking about our show.
Yes.
It's lovely. Like it's very soothing, and it is really nice to see people like win and do well. And when they don't do well, everyone else is like really nice about it.
Yes. Oh, and I do have to say though, because it's like for people who have read it, there's like someone that is not so nice in the Bake Off.
Yeah,
that is totally like one of my like godsons. Shout out to Dexter. So it's like if he's out there watching, yeah, that was him, because it's like he like always wanted to be like a villain.
Oh,
and so I was like, I'll make you a villain.
Oh,
yeah.
What?
So
that is like the best present. You're like, you want to be a villain in my book, and people are like, absolutely.
And he was all about it. So that's based off of him.
So you mentioned the book too. I guess because publishing is what it is. Like I know sometimes you can't tell us all about it, or like what else. What are you working on? What's next for you?
Next, it's coming out through Wednesday next summer. We're still working a little bit on the title, but it is I lean hard into like my love of Disney and Star Wars, as I've said. So I can share a little bit more. It is a YA reimagining of the J-Lo classic, The Wedding Planner.
Oh my God.
But it's
a classic.
It's a classic. Yeah, like J-Lo is everything. But it's with quinceañeras. So my main character is, so it's like, baking adjacent, because it's, so she's a party planner, but the arc of that book is, and so she's like this, like, she is trying to get like an internship for a fairy godmother's apprentice for this like guru party planner, like extraordinaire. And so like her journey is going to be like going from becoming like the planner and like that type A person in your life to like becoming the princess and the participant in your life. So there's some Cinderella elements in it, J-Lo, and of course, because it's me, I am going to try to make you cry again. And so there is like grief dynamics. Like there's like the core of that is like a love story between like two sisters. And so it's like I used Pixar's Onward as like inspiration for that. So there's like a chaotic older sister and then like a type A planner. So
that's so like, because you mentioned that of like using Onward, it's so interesting how we use other kinds of media to like like inspire or like at
Yes.
least connect to. Like, okay, how did they do that? Like, how did they make me feel so much?
Yes.
You kind of go back to it. Oh, okay.
And Pixar is like a master class in
Oh,
like making you
Pixar.
cry. So
Like that first like whatever 5 minutes of up, and you're just like on the floor. You're like, why did you do this to me? This is
exactly.
terrible.
It's so good. But so I'm super excited about that. I turn in line edits on next Wednesday, and then I get on a plane on Thursday to go to Walt Disney World.
This is my favorite thing about the way our contracts work is it's like, okay, so you're selling this book and it comes out on this date, and then a year from then you have like another book due, and you're like, wait, but I'm supposed to do a promo for this one, and they're like, it's due, it's great. You're like, oh, okay.
That's exactly what I said. I'm like, it's launch month, and then like, yeah,
It's
it
like,
doesn't matter.
Literally everybody has to do it. You're like, but timing, guys, like give us
No, that
That's
doesn't
like a
happen in
couple weeks.
publishing. That doesn't happen.
no, but that's exciting.
Yes. What about you? Your next YA one?
That one, so it's called We're Never Getting Home. And the reason, like, I kind of really connected with your talking about like Onward and GBBO and that kind of thing is because, so it's about two ex-best friends that go to a music festival together. They don't think they're going to be in the same car, and of course they are because, books. They get there and their driver crowd surfs and loses their keys. So two ex-best friends trying to get home, but because there are those like friendship dynamics, like my editor was like, you should watch there was like a show on HBO where there was a season where the friends had like a fallout, and
Insecure.
it was Insecure. She was like, you should watch Insecure because like they start out really strong, and then you realize like one of them is maybe like being selfish, and like with friendships it's not always big angry fight. It could just be like a slow pulling away.
Yes.
And like I was watching and being like, oh, I
love
get
that
what she
show.
means. Like, I
It's
get it.
so good.
But like
Yeah.
maybe watch things and you're like, okay, I felt that. How do I get a
Yeah.
feeling in this?
Yes.
So
So like work smarter, not harder. It's already been done, and it's probably going to be done a lot better than I could do it right now. So
we're trying.
yeah,
darn
we're
it.
trying.
But the wedding planner is fantastic.
It's so
I'm
good.
so excited about
But it's like, see, and I had issues with the wedding planner though, because it's like Matthew McConaughey was like not the greatest guy in that. So it's like I
you're like,
try
maybe
to-
like
yeah,
make it better.
exactly.
Make it
I'm gonna
better.
make it better. Yeah, hopefully.
That's right. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't. And
This
so
is your wedding planner, dude.
exactly. So I changed that. So that is
Okay.
like not like that's not in my.
So it'll be like the wedding planner, but better.
yes, without a cheater. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can probably
Yes.
open up for questions. We have some time. So I don't know if anyone in the audience has some.
DJ,
Hi. Congratulations.
thank you.
So, how much? So you mentioned your background. So how much? I like how the Ruby is darker skin on the cover. Like, as someone who is BIPOC, I look late, and I like seeing that. Did you have any say in the design of this?
Yes. No. So for me, it was like very, very important that Ruby looked a certain way. And I wrote that like in the book, and I wanted that reflected, in the cover, because it's like growing up, I didn't see that, it's like I'm from like a time where like there was like nothing, especially in YA. I think YA now is doing a lot better and becoming like way more inclusive. But yeah, I did. It's like, and I'm hardcore, so it's like I probably should have even sent like Fenty. I think I want to do that for like next time and do like Fenty
Swatches.
swatches of like these shades are like the ones that like are acceptable. But it's like I sent in like different like pictures of like people with like the skin tones and like the hair textures in it. So it's like and they knocked it out of the park. Like I was really happy with that. And yeah, I'm glad that I could, be a part of that, of like pushing, like, like having like more inclusive like covers, and hopefully that's like something that, continues to happen for like book 2.
Exciting.
I know ours looks so good together, by the way.
I mean, it's really nice, like, because you mentioned like there was a time where it would have just been like you would have seen that title, and then it would have been a picture of like a cake on the front.
Yes. Yeah. No.
And, like that would have been it.
It would have been.
And then people would have been reading and be like, "Oh, she's Cuban."
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it would have
would've
been a surprise. Like 30 pages into the book.
Well, and it was, now that we talk about it too, it was like important for me to have the name, because it's like, so her name, you like immediately know that she's like, you know, not white.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the things too that I wanted the name, and they also like, you know, were very accommodating with that, because again, like there was like a list of like names where it's like, again,
It would have been like the recipes for success, cake on the front.
exactly done. Yeah, exactly.
Aww. It is like a nice change. I think they're like obviously like they're kind of willing to put our faces on the cover. And I was actually talking to an author that has been in the business a very long time, and she was saying that with one of her first books, they were like, well, we could just do like a silhouette of the person. Like they just didn't want to put the face of like a person of color like on the cover. It was, but obviously like, you know, times. Like,
How long ago was this? I bet you wasn't even that
it
long
probably
ago.
wasn't. It was probably like, I mean, I don't remember the timeline, but you know, maybe like late 80s, early 90s, like enough where they're like, this isn't going to sell if we put like a picture of this kind of person on the cover.
Yeah,
it's very
yeah, I'm glad that that's changing. I hope that it's like we get more of that, especially with like disability rep,
Yeah.
you know, because I feel like that's like still like one area where we need to make like a lot more progress
Yeah.
than we have. And I have seen some books that are reflective of that, but I think we need more.
Yeah. All right. Yes.
From our virtual audience, what advice would Ruby give to a current high school senior getting ready for life after high school?
Okay, she would say that it is never too late to come up with a new recipe for success. That there is like no expiration date for like making new recipes. So
Oh. Yes.
So this is sort of relating to when you were talking about the oven and baking earlier. That oven that may or may not be broken. But at some point, would you attempt to make some of the recipes in your book?
yes. Okay. No, the cookie with like the cherries, because it's like, this is like I don't know, because I haven't even like looked at the back of it, because it's like when I wrote like the supplemental materials, like cherries in my imagination do become like Ruby's like signature ingredient. So I think those cookies are the ones that I wanted to make the most.
Another question for our virtual audience. What has been the most challenging part of juggling your full-time job as a lawyer and writing a novel? And then what has been the most rewarding?
Okay, well, right now I am not practicing, but when I was and doing this, it was difficult. Like, and I don't have kids, so I don't know how people like, you know, are able to do it. But there was like I think that's why like the first draft, you know, happened so slow, because I didn't have time. Like it was mostly on like the weekends, and I remember like there would be like Fridays, like coming home from work, just like impossible, and it would take like a Saturday to then like recharge and then like full steam ahead on like Sunday. So it took a long time, and like for me, like yeah, like right now, I think I probably wouldn't have been able to write like book 2 as fast as I did, like had I still been practicing.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I know like what publishing is like, I think I would be able to like better balance those two things. Like, should I want to do both? I think it's possible, because it's like now that I have like, you know, like my skills, like I'm like more confident in them. Like that is something that I've been thinking about. Like, okay, like this is actually possible. Like I think with writing, you can make it like the side hustle, and it's very possible, but I wouldn't be able to go to Disneyland as much. And right now I need to go to Disneyland.
Any other questions?
What joy or what in your life lately or through this journey has brought you joy?
Ooh, that's a great one. I think, just meeting other writers and meeting other bookish people. I have expanded, you know, just like my friend base so much with like everyone that I've met. And then just driving up here, I was like telling like my sister, like today I got like my first email, you know, from like a writer saying like how much, you know, like RUBI helped them through a really difficult time. So now that she's like getting out there in the world, like, like my sister was like saying, she's like, that's important, you know, like it was like a reminder of like why I do think art is important. And like, I think even if like our parents didn't like value it, there is value in like making someone feel better, you know? And if it's a YA book with like a cute cover, like that doesn't diminish, you know, how awesome that is.
Aw.
What about you?
This is a very, very minor one compared to that. But, and I mean to update my Slack group about it, but I was getting finished copies of my middle grade, the takeout, and I got like, you know, I got the email, like UPS has delivered it. I rush home and I look and it's nowhere. And I freak out and there's no pictures and I'm like about to file a claim. I send an email to my editor. The next day, it gets dropped off with like a Rent the Runway package because they were like, oh, we accidentally took this. I was like, you took a 20-pound box of books like off of my, like, why did you think this was clothes? Like, I mean, thanks for bringing it back. But I was like, oh, that was like the joy was that I didn't have to, you know, hunt down whoever took 20 pounds of books off of my doorstep.
I can't believe that.
I just,
No.
but now I have extra copies of the takeout, so it's good. Everything is good, but there was that moment of like, I will find them.
Yeah, and I will kill them.
Well, my first thought was like, I need to restart my like the Ring recording subscription because it lapsed, and I'm like,
It always
lazy.
lapses when you actually.
I know, and I was like, oh, if only I'd seen them, but like now.
That's good.
So that is a very minor toy compared to
Well, no,
you changing somebody's life. with your book.
no, but that, yeah. So it's like, but then there's just like small things like getting to like go to like all these like bookstores that it's like I
Yeah.
patronized like during the pandemic and I have only done it like virtually, and now getting to see them and just like meeting people and like getting out there. I think that's awesome.
Any other questions? Yes.
Would you, both of you, would you ever take any trips to any other countries? I saw that you're from Guatemala. I just noticed that.
Yes.
Which is, I've been there. It's amazing. Would you ever take trips to other countries for research for any future books?
You go first. You go first.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like I don't know how I'd work it into a book. I'd like make it about pasta just so I could go to Italy. It would just be like, for some reason, pasta is like a key point of this book. Editor, please let me. I'm gonna need to take some time off to go eat a lot of pasta.
You have to do that
for her, you know, for her story arc somehow. It like changes her life in some way.
No, I'm all about but it's true. It's like even if you like, it's true. It's like for me, it's like travel and like going places is like the best like reset button. It's like something I love so much to do. So yeah, like for me, 100%. If I could, you know, if the IRS believes me that it is for research, then like that would be even better. But like for example, like when I went to the Galactic Star Cruiser the first time, I was like, and just like, you know, got to be like LARPing there and doing all these things. I'm like, there's a story here. And so it just like started getting like those like wheels turning, you know? And yeah, like for me, I think since I do just like love storytelling, all versions of it, like that immersive storytelling is awesome. And when you're in a foreign country, because I mean, like here, like I love Southern California, but you could go to any Southern Californian city and it's pretty much the same. But when you're somewhere else that is so different, you're completely immersed in a new culture, and that has to inspire you.
There's like, I think that's like a mindset that you're like, I am far more open to stuff going wrong or to just like to changes of plans. And that I think it's one of those things that they tell like writers. I think for writer's block is literally just like get out of your comfort zone, like in any way. Like you don't have to go to a foreign country, but if you write every day in a coffee shop, like literally go write somewhere else because maybe something will unlock because you're doing something different.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a great question. And yeah, like I'm going to be traveling a lot next year. And like, yeah, even this year, like me and my sister, we're going to China for a month.
Oh, wow.
In October. And we have, like hopefully for my birthday, we're going to go to, this is wild, but Antarctica.
Do they have bookstores in Antarctica?
So I mean, I just think doing new things, like there's, and just like living. This is like for any writers out there. I think this is like my number one like takeaway. It's like you have to live life to then like write about something. And so just like the more adventures you
Mhm.
have, and whether it's like, somewhere small or somewhere far away, just like what you said, like getting out of your comfort zone, I think that just opens you up to new things.
That's exciting.
I know. I'm so excited.
Any other questions?
I think we have reached the end. So everyone, let's give a nice round of applause again for Jessica, and thank you, Tracy. For everyone who's watching live right now, don't forget you still have a chance to purchase your own signed copy of RUBI RAMOS'S Recipe for Success, as well as any of Tracy's books. You can either call the store or you can place an online order, and we'll make sure we get that to you. Thank you so much. Have a good night.